Hello and welcome to this new episode of International Consulting Podcast. I am today with Josh Eberly from Glonzer LLC. Hello, Josh.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Thanks for having me on here. I'm excited.
pleasure. So actually, you have two companies.
Yeah, I do. So I have a digital marketing company called Conklin Media. Check us out. We work almost exclusively with mid-sized to large companies who are looking for business growth. And so when we talk about business growth, we're looking for the people who are really want to grow through sales and acquisition in their company. We try to think outside the box. So we're not like your traditional, you would quote, an agency, digital marketing agency.
Mhm.
We're really just people focused on growth. And my other company, ironically, and this is kind of how I got invited on the podcast, is a real estate investment company. So we help real estate investors acquire and also source off-market properties. So we are based in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, about an hour west of Philly. And we've really been working with a lot of investors recently to create passive revenue and give them opportunities to invest in the US market.
Okay, that's nice. And we are going to talk together about SEO, search engine optimization best practices. And you are using SEO on both your companies to get more business or to reach more customers. What is the main target of your SEO strategy?
Yeah, great. And that's a great question because when people think about SEO, it's normally, an afterthought for them, or that it's really a confusing subject. A lot of people don't really understand, like, hey, like, what is SEO? And so when we talk about SEO, just real quick to define it for everyone on the podcast, SEO is search engine optimization. And the easiest way I always describe it is if you open up your phone and you pull up, Google or Safari, it's when you type in different words into the search engine and you see the results that come up. Now, a lot of those companies that come up are actively working on their SEO. They're actively trying to rank higher in Google or higher in Safari to get you to click on their link. And when you do SEO really well, you're able to rank well for keywords. I try to partner with people who understand this, who are looking for more sales. They understand their customers, understand who they want to target, and what keywords actually make them money in the process. Perfect. So, do you have any other questions around just like what we do with SEO, Jan, or like how we do SEO that you want to ask me?
Yes, for sure. We will go through all of this. And what I am especially interested in is your international SEO. So especially you are based in US, but you are working with other markets with people that use other languages to speak and to work with, and you are also targeting them, right?
Yeah, and this is a really good topic for today because I was actually just working on a lot of our campaigns for our clients, and a lot of people actually really get this wrong. It's a really hard topic to master, and I was looking at it from a perspective of if you look at like the world, the world economy and just how business is and so interconnected now. And I know, you're probably listening to this at home right now because of COVID. And you've heard in the news and just the economy with COVID, like there's a lot of like uncertainty out there. And for me, I've always thought of it as the world has progressed and just became more technologically advanced, we become more interconnected. And so when we do SEO now, you can't just think about your home country or your native language. You have to think about who are the customers and users and the avatars in different countries or the people that speak different languages that you need to target as well, right? You need to make your website, you need to make your service available in a multitude of languages in order to reach people across the globe, right? So our goal and how we work is we really help companies accomplish this by identifying with them opportunities in other countries. Maybe it's an emerging country, like Latin America is very emerging right now. Jan, I know you're in Warsaw, Poland, which he was just telling me is apparently a phenomenal investment opportunity as well. And there's just more and more people in these countries getting online and looking for products and looking for services. And, so for us in America, we're already in a saturated market. We have so many people online, people are always on their phones, they're always doing things. But if you look at the world in general and you look at just where people are populated, there's a lot of people that are coming online for the first time. And so there's so much opportunity there to get ahead of this giant curve and be the first in your marketplace to do SEO correctly, to rank for keywords, and to get that heads up advantage over a lot of your competitors. And if you look back, the early, I'd say early 90s, late 90s, to give an example, you look at Apple. Apple was an innovator in the field. And so, Tim Cook early on was, really innovating in the field. He said, I'm going to commit to doing this. And you look at where Apple's at now. They're a global presence. No one can touch them. They started early in the game. They kind of invented the whole mobile cell phone game. You look at Google as well. Google started out as one of many search engines. Google wasn't the most dominant search engine. But back in 1999, they made a commitment to being the best search engine. And over time, they have just continued to grow and make their products better and better and better. And so for 20 plus years now, they have been the dominant industry leader in that space. But imagine trying to launch a search engine website right now in 2020, right? It's saturated. You're not going to get any exposure. So they were kind of the first to the game to develop products. They were the first in the area to really set the standard. And so I always encourage a lot of our clients, if you're out there listening and you have multiple locations across the globe, or if you just maybe in your hometown, or maybe you serve customers that speak a different language than you, or a different country or different culture, whatever it is, to really consider, is there opportunity in some of these less served areas to be the first in that area? Because if you look at it, 20 years down the road, you want to be the dominant player in your industry, right? You're not playing for tomorrow, you're playing for 20, 50, 100 years in business, right? Mm-hmm. So if we're only playing to tomorrow, we're really not setting ourselves up for success long term.
So are you actually saying that international SEO is a long-term strategy?
Yes, it is. And this is a big misconception that a lot of people have in just SEO in general. And this is why a lot of people don't do it. Because if you own a business, right? If I own a business and I need to make sales, the first thing I'm going to do is say, hey, what's the most important action I can take right now to increase sales, right? Maybe it's hire a sales guy. Maybe it's spend money on Facebook marketing, or spend money on AdWords, Google AdWords. And a lot of those actions are what I call, they're more direct response. They're more like, hey, we need money in the door. We need sales right now. Let's spend money to make money, right? SEO doesn't work like that. SEO is a process of continual improvements and a process of continual content creation over time that the search engines recognize you as the leader. And so when you launch a website today, there's a reason why you don't go to number one on, in Google right away for certain keywords, right? They need to take time to evaluate your website. They need to crawl your website. They need to understand what product or service that you offer. Google needs to see, or the other search engines need to see, are you authoritative? Do you actually have good information on your website? Do you know about this topic? Or are you just completely making stuff up, right? So SEO is a long-term strategy. So when we kind of go into an SEO project, or even international SEO, we tell people, hey, this is going to be at least a 3 to 6 month commitment before you see results. But the long-term benefit is, once you get ranked very highly, you don't have to spend as much time achieving that rank, right? You get the free traffic. So there's a lot of time investment and maybe money investment up front. But once you get to that position and you're getting that free traffic, you don't have to spend money every month to make money. You're getting free leads, you're getting free sales, you're just purely making profit at that point. And that's really what you want to be at as a business.
Okay, so for you, you're mentioning 6 months strategy for your clients. That's already a long-term strategy, or that's the short-term strategy to enter the SEO game?
Yeah, that's when you first start kind of seeing results. You start seeing movement, actual movement there. You know, a lot of clients out there, and especially when you're doing international SEO, which involves a lot of moving parts and in different countries, it's going to be a year, 2-year strategy that you really want to outline when you go into it. So, you know, when we talk with, you know, big manufacturers or big clients or big people who are in this game, this SEO game, they're always say, yeah, we want to outline a year to 2-year strategy of where do you want to be in 2 years. And we know over time, if we continue to do these things correctly, we should rank high in 2 years' time for those keyword terms. So Google actually, you know, little known fact, there's a thing called a sandbox. So you remember as a kid, you used to play in the sandbox and, you know, all kinds of stuff and get all dirty and your parents yell at you, right? So Google like puts you in the sandbox, and I'm not a huge hockey fan. I don't know if you're a hockey fan, Jan, at all, but okay. So, you know, if the guy gets a penalty or gets in a fight, where does he go? The penalty box, right? Yeah, the jail. He goes in jail, right? The penalty box. So Google has their penalty box, right? So when you have a site, you know, your site, when you launch a site, or if you haven't really done much with your site at all for a long time, you're kind of in this imaginary penalty box, right? Google says you have to behave for a little bit and do the things, these correct things, and then we're going to let you out, right? So you're kind of in this sandbox for a couple months as they see that you are making the right behaviors, right? And then they let you out of the sandbox, and your site, you know, starts to rank much better and do much more things in the keyword rankings.
Are your clients ready to hear this long-term strategy talk? I think most of the people, when they hear about SEO, they want results fast. They want to pay X dollars to have this exact return on investment. How does it work?
Yeah, perfect. So, like I said, anyone that's, you know, coming to you and saying, oh, I can get you, you know, keyword rankings in a month or 2 months, you know, they're doing things that are what we would refer to as black hat or, you know, shady practices. So, you know, there's always ways to cheat the system. There's always ways to kind of take shortcuts. But our foundation and a lot of really good foundations of companies who understand the long-term benefits, we want to build our house on, you know, rock. We want to lay that foundation very strong for the business so that, you know, if I fall out of a tree or you go away as the consultant or whatever, you know, their systems and processes keep running and they keep, you know, growing their business. We don't want to build it on sand, on the foundation on sand, where if Google updates their algorithm or something comes out and it wipes out all their keyword rankings. There's a lot of people out there that will advertise some shady tactics, and yes, they will work for a little bit of time, but I've been around long enough in SEO in general to know that eventually Google will catch up with you and they will update their algorithm, and then your keyword rankings will go way down. So we really advocate, you know, these companies we work with, and usually, you know, they're a little bit bigger. They're in it for the long run, and they're in very competitive industries. And they're not the only people that are trying to rank for these keywords, right? So they understand there's a cost and investment to do this, but it's better than having to continually spend money every single month to bring in new leads, right? So if they can replace a lot of those leads that they're spending money on right now with free leads, their profit margins increase substantially.
Okay. And when it comes to international markets, so what is the difference between simple SEO, trying to rank on Google for what you have on your website, and targeting international markets?
Good question. So how it works, I'm gonna kind of like explain a little bit how, you know, you can target different places. How it works is if you are, let's say you have a site and it's in complete Spanish, right? Google knows this, or Safari, or everybody else knows this, and they will rank your site for Spanish keywords, right? So they understand that the language that the site is in Spanish. Okay, now doesn't mean that you could go there, and you're from France, so you could go there. You could be sitting in France, and you could go to this website, and it could be all of in Spanish. Doesn't mean that you can't engage with the website. Doesn't mean that you can't fill a lead out. Doesn't mean you can't do anything with the website. You can, but it's not automatically designed to rank for keywords in France, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what you have to do is you have to tell Google, hey, here's the Spanish version of my website, and here's a French version of my website. Okay, now these two connect to each other, right? So it can be same content here, translated, but these are connected, right? They're basically the same thing. It's not two separate sites. You don't just have a Spanish site and a French site. It's connected content, right? And then maybe you have an English version, and those are all connected together. So when you create your site, and there's a lot of different strategies to like how to set it up and do these things, but when you create your site, you want to think about what languages or what regions am I selling in, and who do I sell to? And then you want to structure your site out from there. Because if you just think about it as, oh, well, I'm just going to make a Spanish site, and half of your clients are in France, you're really ignoring the opportunity in the business, right? So I see a lot of companies make that mistake where they just say, hey, well, I'm just going to make an English site, but they have sales offices in 5 other locations around the world, and they just refer everyone to the English site, thinking that, everyone coming on is just going to speak English. Well, you're not a native English speaker. I am, and I can tell you, I'm not a native French speaker. And if you asked me to go to a French site, I wouldn't know what the heck to click on to save my life. So even though I know a few words, it's much harder to understand the context of the page, to get the marketing of the page, and understand, where to go on the website. So when you're really laying it out, you want to think about, okay, we have a Spanish site, we're going to have an English version, we're going to have a French version, we have a German version, we're going to have a Japanese version, wherever your customers are at, you have significant volume of demand for your product or service. That's where you want to lay out before you even start.
Okay, so I have a technical question. Mm-hmm. So how would you recommend setting up these different versions? Is it through different separate domain names, like one.fr for French, one.es for Spain, and then what about Mexico? Or is it only through meta tags like hreflang?
Yep, great question.
Subdirectories, subdomains.
Yes, this is where it gets super technical, and everybody is different on this. So I would say there's two kind of separate topics there, and I'll address the first one, and we'll get to the other one. The first one is just, what does your domain look like, right? Like, do you going to have a standard domain and then use / and then do each individual country, ES, FR? Are you going to do a subdomain? So .fr, then your domain, .uk, your domain, or are you going to do subdirectories? There's different ways of setting it up. There's no right way, there's no right way from an SEO perspective to do it. The thing I caution everyone to do is just, once you choose a way, you need to make sure that you are consistent with that way. Google will crawl your site on the sitemap, and it will crawl in a specific way. So if you change how you do it, between the different variations, you're in a load of trouble, a lot of trouble. So what I see a lot of times is companies, they've done it 2 different ways. They'll usually do a subdomain. So it'll be, mx dot, for us, messercutting.com or us.messercutting.com. They use a subdomain at the front, or they'll use a subdirectory. So Dorner Conveyors / East, or Dorner Conveyors / FR to specify. So when you set up the domain, you really want to choose that quickly on your end. We like to use WordPress as a CMS, as a website builder on our side. So there is some advantages to doing a multiple site, install with subdomains. I do like that option. And then when you get into how do you connect them all together, you want to use hreflang to connect them all together. And it's a two-way thing. So you want to make sure that if you put an hreflang on your Spanish version, English version's over here. On the English version, you also want to put the tag to make sure that it says, hey, the Spanish version's over here. So it's a two-way thing that you have to make sure is on there. If you use WordPress, like I said, we usually work with a tool called Yoast Seo. It's a plugin, it's a free plugin, you can use it. It allows you to set a lot of that stuff up on the back end. And then we use the Polylang translation plugin as well. Are you familiar with that? I think
Yes.
yeah, so use the Polylang translation plugin. It allows you to associate different translations and versions of your content to each other, and it automatically does those things for you.
Sounds pretty easy, actually.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a lot more complex than that, but you get the point. And, a lot of people don't use WordPress. So I've had to do actual implementations where we hard coded everything. Every single page had to have a meta title, meta tag at the top, in the head, that associated back to the other pages. And a lot of people make this mistake too, because you brought up Mexico, which I think a lot of people make this mistake too, even though they're talking about the English sites, because when you look at, English, there's the US version and then there's UK. Mm-hmm. And Google actually has two different denominators that you use for each one. So you have to be careful that you're not just grouping, okay, UK in with the US. Now, you can do that, but Google is going to say, okay, well, this is written in the UK version, or it's written in the US version. It's not going to give you as much keyword rankings than the one that you're not emphasizing. Same way with Spanish. If you're looking at Spanish translations on your site, there's the Spain version and then there's the Mexico version now. And I'm assuming within the next probably, year or two here, because Latin America is evolving, it's growing so much. They're going to be coming out with maybe Brazil, which I know speaks Portuguese. Dialect of Portuguese. They're going to be coming out with Argentina. I'm assuming eventually Google is going to have different denominators for specific countries, right? Because keywords don't always mean the same. We all speak different dialects. I'm not from the South in America, but people sound like this, right? So we have different dialects even within different regions. And Google's getting really smart, and they're saying, okay, well, certain people call, here, I call, if we, Coca-Cola, we call that soda. And my wife calls it pop, because she's from the Midwest, right? She calls it pop. So if I type soda into Google, I get a different query. I get a query for the drink, and she types pop into Google. It's the same thing, right? But Google knows that over time. It knows, differences in, just how people call things. But when you're talking about, Spain versus Mexico, the way that different words come together and the way that the language runs and the dialects that people speak, it's actually a lot different when you look at SEO. So you have to be careful that you are thinking about differences like that you are including translations that make sense for your business or company. We had a client, and one of the big things we've been helping them with is they translated their site from English to Spanish as a version, but they did it and they were marketing it as the Spain version. Well, actually their plan is in Mexico. So it was completely done wrong from the get-go. So we had to go back and change a lot of that. And now they're getting a lot more exposure in Mexico because those are the people actually using that version of the site. So it's important to really think about those things and understand, like I said earlier, your roadmap for success. You want to outline that before you even start.
This brings another question. So actually, by adding more languages on the website, we can make it more international and target international search engine optimization keywords. But as you just mentioned, there are differences between the languages themselves. So how can we stay global while targeting different markets? Maybe we still want to target the whole English speaking world, the whole Spanish speaking world, the whole French speaking world, or whatever the language is.
Yeah, great question. So one way that I do that is, we have a multiple language selector right on our menu when you come on board. So it's a very unique thing, but normally when we're dealing with it, I like to group people by area, so geographic area. So like, we'll have a Latin America, area. We'll have a Europe, um, like a Europe distinction. We'll have an Asia distinction. We'll have a North America one. So when you can select that on the menu, and it automatically defaults to the primary language in that area. Now, the more advanced thing that you can do that we really like doing is based on the user's IP address, where they're coming from, right? We auto default them to the version that we think is the best for them automatically. So if you're sitting in Poland right now, you would see a different version of the site than if you were back in France, right? So in Poland, because we don't have a direct translation for that country, or just in that area, we would probably serve you either the German or the US version of the site, just because we're making an assumption there. But if you're in France, we would definitely serve you the French version of the site. So we kind of try to default it for where the user's IP is coming from, to try to make an educated guess about the best version for them. But they have the option right there in the menu to switch between any of the languages that are available on the site.
But so let's say, for example, so as you mentioned, so for example, myself, I am French, I am now in Poland. So if I look for something on Google and I find the answer on your website, Google will probably show me, let's say, the French page of your site. And then when I click on that page, you will then redirect me yourself to what you think is the right one for Poland.
Right. So that would be, yes. So how we can set it up is, it really depends. And it's super complicated because, I don't know your browser history. So you might have it set for France, set it. But what we do is based on the IP address, like where you're physically sitting, right? So, every Wi-Fi network shoots out an IP address and says, hey, I'm located here, right? Like you can ping it. Based on that address, we default you to the version that we think is the best version for you. Now, you have the option to change that, right? And that's what we like about this is that, when you're talking about SEO, you want to be relevant to that person based on the search query, right? Where they're sitting at. So, it's not always going to be perfect. It's not always going to be correct, but, most of the time, 95% of the time we're right, or we default it to a version that the person can understand and comprehend, and then they can click around the site. One thing I've noticed, just some insight here from the international community, is that Asia is such a big emerging market, and it's huge compared to the massive potential there, just population and just different diversity of group of people there, and it's really cool. Now the downside to it is when you do something like I just talked about, there's so many translations of dialects and languages in Asia that it's almost just too much of a pain to even try to start on the international side. So a lot of companies, what they've been doing is they will default to English for that region, right? So,
but that's an opportunity then.
Yes. So there's probably a huge opportunity here, especially China in the near future. Japan, you have Japan, the Philippines emerging. You have, China. There's a lot of big players out there that a lot of countries really aren't touching because it's so time intensive and expensive to get these translations done. And they've kind of just gone with the whole default that English is the dominant language of business still in those areas. Which we've seen, the opposite, I think, is true of, when you look at Europe or Latin America now, English is still prevalent. But, when we want to get really, really involved and really get results, the native language usually wins over the English version, right? So it's all about personalized results. It's all about making sure that you're connecting with the people in those areas because, I mentioned this in France, if I run my SEO like in France in English versions or my ads in English, sure, I'm going to get some results, right? But it's not going to connect with them as well as if I'm actually in the language that people speak every day, and you feel like you are that company that's right there, right? Don't feel like you're the company that's sitting in three countries over and is trying to market. You know, you feel like I'm down the street, I care about you, I understand your pain points, and that's really crucial for business.
So what would be actually your best tips for somebody, or most likely a company, that would want to start his international SEO strategy?
Great. So best tips on my end are this: set your foundation before you start. So plan it out. Understand, hey, you know, I need to get 3 translations done. Here are the languages that I need to translate into, and really think about that before you start. The second tip I have is it doesn't have to be as complicated as you think it needs to be. So you can use resources like Fiverr, which is a good resource, or Upwork. I don't know if you know what Upwork is.
Sure.
I will go on Upwork and I will look for a SEO or a marketing person in a country that I want to work in. So, you know, if I'm looking to get a German translation done, I'm going to go look for a German marketer who understands SEO. And I'm going to say, hey, here's my version of the site. Maybe it's in French. Here's my version of the site. You know, here's where, you know, this is like, you can kind of understand the words. Here's how you translate the words, and you're going to give that to them, because a lot of times when we directly translate, you know, if you just go from French to German or whatever, you lose a lot of the meaning of the words. Like they don't make sense. So you really need that marketer or that SEO person to say, okay, well, in France, this means industrial conveyor. If I translate that directly into German, it means conveyor for industrial uses or something different. You know, you really want to make sure that that person understands the translation, and then how to take that translation and optimize it for SEO, right? And especially when you're talking about title tags, you know, page titles, things like that. So go on Upwork, find somebody that speaks the language that you want to get it translated in, who's a marketer, who has SEO background, and work with them. Because a lot of your translation companies are just going to give you, hey, translate this from German to French, and it's not going to always make sense, right? So that's my second tip. My third tip is be patient with this, know that it takes time, but be consistent with it. So if you are committed to translating your content, if you're committed to producing new content, and you're committed to growing in that area, you will see good results. A lot of people think this is a one and done situation, right? Oh, I translated 5 pages. Now I'm just going to rank magically for all these keywords. Well, that's not the case. So Google wants to see consistency. They want to see that you care, that you understand the topic, and that you're consistently putting out content out there for your users in different areas.
Actually, that's these tips are very easy to take action on. It's not so complicated.
Yeah. No. My fourth tip is you give me a call if you want, but if you can't do the first 3, just give me a call. But yeah, I like to give easy tips to everybody, because in all reality, you know what's best for your business. And I like people to at least have a little bit of experience trying it out. And what we found is a lot of times, you know, people just don't have the time, or they run into some roadblocks. And that's where we can really come in as a company and help them. You know, because we've done this now for 25 plus clients. We work with big international clients, so we understand the steps and all the action steps that need to be taken. But we really want to make sure that when we work with people, we're looking for a partner, right? It's a partnership. And so a lot of people with international SEO, they either are committed to doing it or they just give up too easy. So I always kind of put them through the ringer a little bit, you know, make them do a little work to show they're interested. And then once they say, hey, you know, this is great, but I need to focus on sales for my business, or I need to focus on, you know, being the CEO or COO or marketing person, that's where we really come in and partner with you.
Okay. One last question. So for a company that would actually want to implement these international SEO best practices and target new markets, how can they find somebody? So is it the same as to find a translation through Fiverr, Upwork, or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. So one, like I said, you can check us out, conklinmedia.com. like I said, we'll help you out with that. There's a lot of great resources out there, that can get you pointed in the right direction. Ahrefs, which I use for a keyword tool, SEO planning, is amazing. They have a whole guide on international SEO that you can download. SEMrush, I actually know those people there. They have a guide as well that you can get started on. But if you're looking to partner with a company that has experience in this field, that understands, what you need to do, check us out at conklinmedia.com. I'm happy to talk with you, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm sure Jan is going to have all of my social media profiles everywhere anyway. So you just feel free to reach out.
For sure. Will do. Okay. Well, that was a very interesting talk. I also learned something, even if I am doing international SEO for several years now. So thank you very much. That was great.
Awesome. Yeah.
So this was Josh Eberly, and we were talking together about international SEO best practices. So thanks again, Josh. That was great. Hope you're having a great day.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
We're waiting for the storm here. It was great. Thank you.
Yeah.